The story begins with a meteorite heading straight for Earth. A family watching the news isn't worried because the mother, Maureen, used her job at the space agency to get them on a list to escape. On the night of the disaster, they boarded a spaceship to find a new planet for humans to live on. One day, while playing poker, their ship was hit by debris from a giant warship. The crash knocked them off course. The ship shook violently, and all the family could do was hold on to each other and hope they would be okay. They landed safely, but their relief didn't last long. A heavy metal box came loose and crushed Maureen's leg. The father, John, opened the top hatch, and their youngest son, Will, climbed out. But when their little daughter tried to get out, she was too big for the opening. Will jumped from the ship to a higher ledge and saw that the whole planet was covered in snow and ice. John and the others helped the injured Maureen out of a different hatch. Just then, they heard the sound of ice cracking. Water rushed in, and their spaceship, with all their supplies, sank into the freezing water. Their first priority was to treat Maureen's leg, but all the medical supplies were on the sunken ship. Then Maureen did something that surprised everyone. She took off her helmet. John yelled at her to stop because they didn't know if the air was safe to breathe. But John had already found out by accident. His pants were torn, and he realized the planet had enough oxygen for them to survive. The rest of the family took off their helmets and breathed in the cold, fresh air. Soon, they faced another big problem. The sun would set in 6 hours, and the temperature would drop to a deadly -51°C. Their spacesuits had heaters, but the batteries would only last for 5 hours. Without a way to recharge, they would freeze to death. John came up with a plan: dive into the sunken ship and get the spare batteries. Since his own suit was damaged and Maureen's leg was broken, he turned to his son, Will, who was the only one small enough to fit through the top hatch. But Will was too scared and just stood there shivering. Seeing her brother was terrified, his older sister Judy jumped into the water. John tried to call her back on the intercom, but she was taking a longer route through another hatch. The water was getting colder and would soon freeze over. Luckily, Judy found the batteries, but as she started to swim back, she realized the water in the ship was already starting to freeze. Judy swam as fast as she could, but the heavy batteries slowed her down. The ice on the surface was now forming quickly. Judy dropped the batteries and swam with all her might, but it was too late. She was trapped in the ice. Judy struggled in the freezing water as the ice grew thicker around her. On the shore, her father screamed for her to leave the batteries and swim faster, but she was already stuck. The family felt completely helpless. Thankfully, the spacesuits were still providing her with oxygen and heat. While comforting her daughter, Maureen used a computer and saw that Judy's battery had less than 5 hours left. They had to get her out before it died. The look on Maureen's face also showed that her own leg injury was very serious. John frantically pulled out a knife and started chipping at the ice, but it was an impossible task with such a small tool. After trying for a long time, he had only made a small hole. Just then, a bright light shone from a glacier in the distance. Will, who was a smart student, guessed that the light might be from magnesium. He explained that magnesium burns with a lot of heat and ice could make it burn even hotter. This gave John a spark of hope. After telling his daughter he would save her, he and his son left to find the magnesium. They walked across the glacier and found enough magnesium to rescue Judy. John carefully collected it, trying not to create any sparks that could be dangerous. But then Will fell through a hole in the ice. He wasn't hurt and found a way out that led to a forest. Will called his father and told him to go back and save his sister, saying he was safe. John trusted him and went back to help Judy, not knowing that Will was only pretending to be brave. All alone, Will sat down on the ground. Suddenly, he saw sparks floating in the air. He tried to call his father, but he was too far away. Will followed the sparks through the forest and found the wreckage of another spaceship, clearly alien. He took out a small camera to record this historic moment, the first proof of aliens.